What's the one thing that's holding you back in your business right now? Think about it. Is it a lack of resources? Is it the market competition? Or is it something within your organization that's stifling your growth? This is the realm of constraints, the bottlenecks, the hurdles, the roadblocks that hinder your business from reaching its full potential. Every business, no matter how efficient or successful it may seem, has at least one constraint that limits its performance. It could be anything from a slow-moving production line to a less effective marketing strategy. It's like a chain with its strength determined by the weakest link. No matter how strong the other links are, the chain will break at its weakest point. That's your constraint, the weakest link in your business. Enter the theory of constraints, a management philosophy that views any manageable system as being limited in achieving more of its goals by a very small number of constraints. This theory, developed by Dr. Eliyahu Goldratt, suggests that an organization can achieve significant growth by identifying and managing these constraints. Imagine a traffic jam. It starts with one slow-moving vehicle or an accident, and soon the entire highway is backed up. This is exactly what a constraint does in a business. It slows down the entire process, causing a ripple effect that hampers overall performance and productivity. But here's the catch. Identifying your business's constraints isn't as straightforward as spotting a slow-moving vehicle on the highway. It requires a deep understanding of your business processes and a keen eye for detail. You need to look beyond the surface, beyond the obvious, to find that hidden constraint that's holding your business back. Once you've identified your constraint, managing it is the next big step. It's about making changes, implementing new strategies, and constantly monitoring your processes to ensure that the constraint doesn't become a permanent roadblock. So, the question is, how do we identify and manage these constraints? Let's take a look at a real-life example from the manufacturing industry, the Toyota production system. When we talk about the theory of constraints, the Toyota production system, or TPS, stands as a shining beacon. It's a classic example of how a company can identify bottlenecks and use this theory to boost efficiency. The TPS is essentially a socio-technical system developed by Toyota that comprises its management philosophy and practices. It combines a holistic approach that includes both the technical system of production and the human system of workers and management. The Toyota production system is grounded in two main principles: just-in-time production and Jidoka. Let's delve a little deeper into what these mean. Just-in-time is all about producing the right part at the right time in the right amount. It's an inventory strategy that strives to improve a business's return on investment by reducing in-process inventory and associated carrying costs. Toyota implemented this principle to avoid the buildup of unnecessary inventory and to highlight problems as they occur. On the other hand, Jidoka means automation with a human touch. This principle implies that when a problem occurs, the equipment stops immediately, preventing defective products from being produced. This way, only products satisfying quality standards are passed on to the following processes on the production line. But how did Toyota apply the theory of constraints here? Toyota identified that the main constraint in their production process was the time wasted in moving parts and finished vehicles. They saw that the traditional batch and queue manufacturing system was the bottleneck. So, Toyota shifted to a pull system, where production is based on actual demand, not on forecasts. This change eliminated the waste of overproduction and waiting time, thereby increasing efficiency. Another constraint Toyota focused on was the physical waste in the production process, such as defective products and unnecessary movements. They implemented the principle of Kaizen, or continuous improvement, to systematically eliminate these wastes. This involved everyone in the organization, from top management to assembly line workers, continuously looking for ways to improve operations. Toyota's use of the theory of constraints didn't stop at their factories. They applied it to their entire supply chain by implementing the Toyota Way, a set of principles and behaviors that underline Toyota's managerial approach and production system. This holistic approach allowed Toyota to manage constraints at every level, resulting in a highly efficient, lean manufacturing system. The results were astounding. Toyota's production became highly efficient, with less waste and lower costs. They were able to produce high-quality vehicles at a faster rate, leading to increased customer satisfaction and market share. Toyota's success story demonstrates the power of identifying and managing constraints in a manufacturing setting. This real-world example of the Toyota production system clearly illustrates the transformative power of the theory of constraints when applied effectively. It serves as a reminder that in every system, the strength of the chain is indeed determined by the weakest link. Now, let's turn our attention to the service industry with a case study on Southwest Airlines. Southwest Airlines, one of the most successful airlines in the world, is a prime example of a company that has effectively applied the theory of constraints. Their secret? They identified their major constraint and managed it in a way that led to improved efficiency and profitability. In the fast-paced world of aviation, time is money. For Southwest, the major constraint was the turnaround time at the gate. The turnaround time is the period from when an aircraft lands to when it takes off again. It includes passenger disembarkation, cleaning, refueling, loading new passengers, and preparing for takeoff. The longer this process takes, the less time the aircraft spends in the air, generating revenue. Southwest Airlines realized that their profitability was tied directly to the number of flights they could operate each day. The quicker they could turn around an aircraft at the gate, the more flights they could schedule. Hence, they set about finding ways to minimize this turnaround time. To address this constraint, Southwest implemented several innovative strategies. They standardized their fleet, using only Boeing 737 aircraft. This meant that pilots, crew members, and maintenance staff only needed to be trained on one type of aircraft, reducing training time and costs. It also simplified scheduling, maintenance, and parts inventory. Southwest also introduced the 10-minute turn. This was an ambitious goal to have planes ready for takeoff just 10 minutes after landing. To achieve this, they developed a precise and efficient process for unloading and loading passengers, cleaning the cabin, and refueling. Every member of the ground crew knew their role and the exact sequence of tasks, enabling them to work quickly and efficiently. In addition, Southwest eliminated assigned seating. This allowed passengers to board and disembark more quickly, as they could choose the nearest available seat rather than having to navigate to a specific seat. These strategies paid off. Southwest Airlines was able to reduce their turnaround time significantly, allowing them to operate more flights per day than their competitors. This resulted in higher revenues and profitability, and Southwest Airlines became a leader in the airline industry. The Southwest Airlines case study is a perfect example of how the theory of constraints can be applied in a service industry. By identifying their major constraint and implementing strategies to manage it, they were able to increase efficiency and profitability. In the words of Gary Kelly, CEO of Southwest Airlines, "Efficiency is our lifeblood." And indeed, Southwest's focus on efficiency, driven by their management of constraints, has been a key factor in their success. Like Toyota, Southwest Airlines showcases the potential of the theory of constraints in a service industry setting. Now that we've seen the theory of constraints in action, let's dive deeper into its principles. The theory of constraints, or TOC, revolves around a 5-step process designed to identify and manage constraints in any business. These steps are identify, exploit, subordinate, elevate, and repeat. Let's delve into each one of these. The first step is to identify. The key here is to pinpoint the most significant constraint that's holding back your organization from achieving its goals. Think of a traffic jam. It's not the sheer number of cars that cause the delay, but rather the bottleneck that limits the flow. For instance, in a manufacturing plant, this could be a machine that's unable to keep up with the pace of production. Next comes the exploit phase. Once the constraint has been identified, the next step is to make the most out of it. This doesn't mean working the constraint harder, but smarter. For example, ensuring that the identified machine is never left idle and that it's always working on the right things is a way to exploit the constraint. The third step is to subordinate. This means aligning the entire organization or process to support the identified constraint. It's like adjusting the speed of all the other cars on the road to match the pace of the slowest one. This ensures that resources are not wasted on overproduction, which would only lead to excess inventory. Next, we have the elevate phase. If, after exploiting the constraint and subordinating everything else to it, the constraint still exists, then it's time to elevate. This might involve investing in new machinery or hiring additional staff. However, it's crucial to remember that this step should only be taken after the previous steps have been exhausted. The final step in the process is to repeat. The theory of constraints is not a one-time fix, but a continuous process. Once you've elevated the constraint, it's time to go back to the start and identify the new constraint. Just like the famous quote by George Bernard Shaw, "Progress is impossible without change," And those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. The theory of constraints is all about change. It's about continuously identifying and addressing constraints in a systematic way to improve overall performance. Remember, constraints aren't necessarily a bad thing. They highlight areas for improvement and can be a catalyst for innovation and growth. As Mark Twain once said, "The secret of getting ahead is getting started." And that's exactly what the theory of constraints helps you do. Get started on the path to continuous improvement. These 5 steps provide a systematic approach to identifying and managing constraints in any business. Implementing the theory of constraints can bring significant benefits, but it also comes with its own challenges. Let's dive into this journey of discovery to see how this theory can be both a game changer and a tough nut to crack. First, let's talk about the benefits. The theory of constraints is like a compass guiding you through the labyrinth of your business operations. It helps you identify the weakest link, the constraint, that's holding back your business from achieving its full potential. When you address this constraint, you unlock an improved level of efficiency, a bit like finding a shortcut in a marathon race. For instance, consider a manufacturing plant struggling to meet its production targets. By identifying and addressing the bottleneck in its assembly line, the plant can significantly ramp up its output, leading to a surge in profitability. But it's not just about money. Implementing the theory of constraints can also lead to enhanced customer satisfaction. By streamlining operations and improving efficiency, businesses can deliver products faster and with higher quality, leading to happier customers. It's like the feeling you get when your favorite pizza place starts delivering in half the time with even tastier pizzas. Now let's pivot to the challenges. The theory of constraints isn't a magic wand that instantly transforms a business. It requires a deep-rooted commitment to continuous improvement and a willingness to adapt. Resistance to change is a common obstacle. People are creatures of habit, and asking them to change the way they've been doing things can be like trying to move a mountain. It requires strong leadership and a clear vision to overcome this resistance and make the necessary changes. Secondly, the theory of constraints isn't a one-time fix. It's a continuous process of identifying and addressing constraints. Once you've dealt with one constraint, another will appear in its place. It's a bit like playing a never-ending game of whack-a-mole. But remember, it's this continuous process that leads to ongoing improvements and keeps businesses agile in the face of change. Also, let's not forget the time and resources required for implementing this theory. It's not a quick fix. It's a long-term commitment that may require significant investments in training, technology, and sometimes even restructuring the organization. In conclusion, the theory of constraints is a powerful tool, but it's not without its challenges. It's like a double-edged sword that can cut through the complexities of your business operations, but requires careful handling to avoid any self-inflicted wounds. But as they say, no pain, no gain. The journey of implementing the theory of constraints may be tough, but the destination is worth it. Despite its challenges, the benefits of implementing the theory of constraints are significant and can lead to substantial improvements in business performance. So, what have we learned about the power of constraints in business? Well, we've discovered that constraints, far from being the bane of a business, can actually be its secret weapon. The theory of constraints, as we've explored, is a powerful management paradigm that views any manageable system as being limited in achieving its goals by a very small number of constraints. Every successful business, from Toyota with its production system to Southwest Airlines with its unique approach to flight scheduling, has harnessed the power of constraints to streamline their processes and maximize efficiency. By identifying the bottlenecks that were slowing them down and focusing their resources on these areas, these companies were able to transform their constraints into opportunities for growth and improvement. But it's not just about identifying constraints, it's about managing them. Remember that a constraint is anything that prevents a system from achieving higher performance versus its goal. Once you've identified your constraints, you need to align your entire organization around tackling them. This means rethinking the way you allocate resources, schedule tasks, and measure performance. It's a systemic, holistic approach that involves everyone from the CEO to the frontline workers. And let's not forget the importance of continuous improvement. In a world where change is the only constant, businesses cannot afford to rest on their laurels. They need to be constantly on the lookout for new constraints that might be holding them back and be ready to adjust their strategies as needed. The power of constraints lies in their ability to focus our attention and resources on what really matters. They force us to cut through the noise and focus on the critical few areas that can make or break our success. They challenge us to think creatively and strategically about how we can do more with less. As we've seen, constraints are not necessarily a bad thing. When managed effectively, they can be the key to unlocking your business's full potential. So embrace your constraints. They might just be the best thing that ever happened to your business.